Okay, I guess that was doing it. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's Drawdown Markham meeting. On this day is January 17th, 2023. As I do for all of these meetings, I would like to acknowledge those who came before us on this land and say a land acknowledgement. So we do begin today by acknowledging that we walk upon the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples. We recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We're grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources. We're committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on here in the Greater Toronto Area is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, and it's now home to many diverse peoples. We'd also like to acknowledge the land we are on here is at the meeting place of two treaties, the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and those of the First Nations of the Williams Treaty. We'd like to thank them and other Indigenous peoples for sharing this land with us. We also acknowledge and recognize all of the world's Indigenous peoples as stewards of Mother Earth. So I do like to say during these meetings is Sawubona, which means I see you, I see myself in you, I see your hopes, your dreams, and your struggles. I see your ancestors as well, because interconnectedness does not end with two people who are greeting each other. It extends to include the ancestors. All beings and Mother Nature are interconnected. There is no sense of being separate. I see myself in all beings, therefore, if I harm other beings or Mother Nature, it translates into harming myself. So again, welcome to the special presentation by Drawdown Markham on this day, Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. This special presentation is being made in collaboration with UnityNet International in support of the members of UnityNet, the Global Partnership for Regenerative Development, GP4RD. I wanted to mention that this presentation will be and is being recorded and broadcast globally for all of our UnityNet members to watch and consider as actions that their own local communities can do as well, and for which Drawdown Markham, located here in the city of Markham, can consider to partner with them through our UnityNet CTP program for building the holistic, regenerative, climate-smart communities, both here in Canada and around the world. So this Drawdown Markham monthly meeting is also taking place on this day, the 7th annual Day of Racial Healing. And the 7th Day of Racial Healing, January 17th, marks the 7th annual National Day of Racial Healing. On this day, individuals, organizations, and communities across the US come together to explore their common humanity and build the relationships necessary to create a more just and equitable world. So in the chat, I have provided some additional information about that event that is taking place today through the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors doing their own event as well. I am putting some additional information about Drawdown Markham into the chat as well for everybody to understand our different networks, including the collaborative tree planting program and our main networks for North America, Turtle Island, and our partner network, UnityNet Africa and Diaspora. So this live Zoom call today is the 5th event of our monthly Drawdown Markham Community Climate Hub meetings following the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns, which started in early 2020. Presentation and discussion today is going to be done by myself again. Lloyd Helferty will be discussing the establishment of a local enterprise network to support the business activities of our local and regional members, as well as those of our provincial, national, and continental network partners across Canada, Turtle Island, and also those globally. Specifically, we'll be talking about the establishment of PodNet GTA, which will be structured to support the 25 local INAB collaboratives at minimum that we would like to create in the Greater Toronto area. The call today will include an open discussion about the key events and related networks that Drawdown Markham would like to support as our UnityNet members begin to do some local demonstration and proof of concept projects here in Markham and in York Region and the Greater Toronto area of Southern Ontario, Canada, here in the Great Lakes Basin north of Lake Ontario in the Don and Rouge watersheds, where I fully expect that these POC projects, as they're called, will be done in partnership with other members of the GP4RD and members of the Global Unity Network starting in this year. I do want to make sure that there will be a focus on doing these projects well and at a scale that makes sense for the people in our own local communities here in the city of Markham and York Region and GTA, but also worldwide as well. And so I do want to mention that within UnityNet, our solutions are centered around actually 5 main things that you see on the screen. First, we are promoting the various types of open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure, where we have 5 unique branded solutions: the gardens, the forests, and regenerative farms, along with the kitchens and regenerative structures that can be used as human and animal habitats, and are intended to be inclusive of and leveraging for our benefit all 5 animal kingdoms, including animals, plants, fungi, protist, and Monera. And second, we're delivering various programs of ongoing community engagement, especially with young people, families, and schools, for the purpose of building community-based open knowledge hybrid learning networks and infrastructure across all sectors of society in each local community globally. Fourth, we're helping to establish these local enterprise networks for regenerative development professionals, these humanitarian entrepreneurs and citizens who wish to engage in demonstrating and implementing local open source regenerative and climate smart solutions that can help communities deliver these global goals locally, starting with those 17 sustainable development goals in their own local communities, wherever they are. And finally, fifth, we're helping to establish community-based empowerment networks. We call them INAB collaboratives, these interfaith, neighborhood, academic, and business collaboratives that are structured around a template of community partners who will pledge to empower those community-based humanitarian entrepreneurs with whom we call FFHE. Again, my name is Lloyd Helferty, the co-founder and chair of Drawdown Markham. I'm also the co-founder of UnityNet International, which is the group that is building the framework for the global Unity network of networks on social media, together with our friends and colleagues who are members of the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors and Activists globally. So Drawdown Markham is focused on our local localization processes as an example for those around the world, and hopefully in future as an anchor for the global partnerships we're creating through the CTP program for building holistic, regenerative, climate smart communities, both here in Canada and in local communities across Turtle Island and around the world, most likely starting in Canada, the US, the Caribbean, Africa, and South Asia, since that is where our networks is strongest and most aware of our activities here in Canada. I do want to put in the chat a little bit about the 5 animal kingdoms and the UnityNet solutions, just so we have that record for anybody on the call. I am putting my own contact information in the chat as well. So it is important for us to move forward globally here in the city of Markham, in the Greater Toronto area of Ontario, here in Canada, in the Rouge and Don watersheds of the Great Lakes Basin on the north shore of Lake Ontario, just south of the Oak Ridges Moraine east-west corridor of protected landscapes and farms, but also working with local Indigenous people and communities, local elected leaders, business people, land stewards, stewardship organizations like TRCA, NGOs, CSOs who are protecting our lands, waters, and biodiversity, while also working with citizens to ensure livelihoods so we can protect and enhance and restore our watersheds and the integrity of the biosphere in the region, and for all downstream communities and people and all relations who we must also consider as our brothers and sisters on this land we call Turtle Island. I'm putting into the chat some additional information about some First Nations that are surrounding the Great Lakes. There's a digital map of the native lands in the region. There are roughly 30 Canadian and American treaties along all of the Great Lakes and 70 recorded treaties throughout Canada. There are about 120 First Nations and Métis communities that now reside along the Great Lakes, and around 205 reserves in Ontario. Again, in the chat, you will find additional information about this, along with some information about the City of Markham's economic development plans, along with those in the Greater Toronto area, and a map of the GTA and Ontario. Some information as well that's in the chat about the Rouge and Don watersheds and the Great Lakes Basin and individual sub-basin maps of our region. As well, I'm providing a map of the Lake Ontario drainage basin and the Oak Ridges moraine, which is an important feature geographically in this region. There's also a very comprehensive Oak Ridges moraine conservation plan, which I am putting into the chat just for our records. So this event today is being hosted by Drawdown Markham, primarily being done to support the expansion of our Drawdown Markham Community Climate Action Hub and the Youth Task Force, but now also PodNet GTA, the UnityNet Global Sister Schools program members and their programs like the local UnityNet Youth Peace Gardens and that network, along with the Regenerative Development Clubs. So the Youth Task Force is a forum for taking local action on big issues like climate change and global warming, and engaging youth in both the conversation and the practical implementation of the solutions that are available to achieve drawdown and the Sustainable Development Goals, those SDGs locally, where we are also knowing those as the global goals, or the SDGs, those 17 goals for all of humanity to achieve by the year 2030, in only about the next 7 years. So the SDGs include things like zero hunger, no poverty, clean water, clean energy, sustainable communities, and habitats for all people and all nature. It also includes taking climate action, achieving justice, equity, peace, education, and health, and well-being for all people and the diversity of species that live with us on this planet we call Earth, and which is really only the one place in the universe where we know for certain that the conditions for human life are perfect. It requires that we be responsible in our production and consumption of Earth's resources, protect the land and the waters and the people and biodiversity, all of our relations, and ensure that we leave no one behind as we begin to transition our global economy to one that is not only sustainable, but regenerative of nature and human relations with our mother, the Earth. So as we move forward, I am putting, again, additional information about our network of networks into the chat, along with some information about these global goals and, for instance, the RDG Club network that we have established as well on our network of networks. So we do also want to build a local professionals network. We call the Drawdown Markham Business and Professional Network, which is the beginning of what we, one of our UnityNet members in Montreal calls a Human Resource Catalog, or HRC, otherwise known as a Community Investment and Exchange System that includes a professional online voluntary database of professionals in our community who believe in a better future, want to take action and make certain that their children and their children's families will have that better future, no matter where they might end up in the world, as they develop their own sustainable pathways and consider a career in regenerative development and seek to become humanitarian entrepreneurs in their own local communities, like here in Markham, New York region, in the Greater Toronto area of Southern Ontario, Canada, on the northern part of Turtle Island, north of the North American Great Lakes, specifically Lake Ontario and Erie, with Ontario also known as Lake of Shining Waters in the Iroquoian language, and Ontario, which means Great Lake in the Huron language. We expect that the local community business network of regenerative development professionals will eventually be expanded into a better platform that we call the Interchange for Peace VCN, which will integrate a number of different social media, including LinkedIn, Alignable, and other professional and business networks. But for now, we use LinkedIn as the top social media professionals network that we started with as we build our network of networks. Again, you will find in chat ways to access our professional business network, along with some information about how Lake Ontario got its name. And so our partnerships in Drawdown Markham are all done through a single partnership through the We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island International Civil Society Organization, which has a mandate to deliver what's called life value peace education, which is done in the context of life learning gardens, which UnityNet International calls community Unity Garden learning centers and community hubs. So the mission of We Energize Global Cooperation is to transform the human mindset and therefore our relationships from one that is focused on conflict and competition to one that is focused on peace and cooperation. So again, you will find additional information about the We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island organization in the chat, along with the Unity Gardens Network and the UnityNet Unity Hub Network, which both support that initial We Energize network. So I mentioned our cooperation with UnityNet International as well. This is one of the organizations that I've been creating with other partners here in the GTA, although our partnerships do extend globally, especially in the US, the Caribbean, Asia, and especially in Africa. But it is intended to become a global network with global reach to all local communities, all countries, eventually. As you can see on the screen, UnityNet International is a humanitarian enterprise and global sustainable and regenerative development corporation supporting and promoting the local delivery of open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure set up as these life learning gardens that we call community Unity Garden learning centers and community hubs. We are leveraging a unique process for localizing delivery of and achievement of the global goals, starting with the SDGs and continuing until 2030. We are offering services that allow other companies and organizations to partner with us to make money doing what they do best while supporting the achievement of those 17 goals until 2030. But after 2030, we don't yet know what the global goals will be. But we do anticipate that they might be called something like the regenerative development goals. And so UnityNet International is in the process of establishing a regenerative development professionals network, both here in Markham, York Region, and the Greater Toronto area of Kent, Ontario, and in Canada, and of course also globally through our network of networks called UnityNet. So again, in the chat, you'll find additional information about UnityNet International. So one of the most important nodes of our global Unity network is the Indigenous Global Unity Network, the IGU network, being developed through the IGU Summit events, which happen weekly on Thursday mornings, where this week, Thursday coming up, is week 85 of our weekly Indigenous Unity discussions and presentations, which are being done in support of practical reconciliation between us settlers, sometimes called colonists, and Indigenous peoples on all continents, but starting here on Turtle Island and in Africa primarily. The IGU network is a network that is intended to bring together all of the Indigenous communities from around the world to contribute to the achievement of a globalized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind, which is the future economy that we would like to support by leveraging our network of networks to empower our members to implement local solutions to achieving these global goals now and into the future. So again, you'll find additional information about the IGU network in the chat, and the related Youth East Gardens network as well. And so you can find out more about our Global Unity Network by going to the links on this page as well. As you can see, the Global Unity Network has a mandate to showcase global cooperation, currently described by SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals, but where we're focused on the local implementation of these global goals, starting with the 17 SDGs and continuing until 2030, as noted. So our network of business structure and interventions at the community level are also intended to empower marginalized people and communities worldwide on all continents, but also including here in the city of Markham in York Region, in the Don and Rouge watersheds of the Greater Toronto Area here in Southern Ontario, Canada, where we can become a model for communities around the world to do similar things. Through our business and social relationships in the local communities we work in, we're also helping people develop and implement local partnerships as a pathway to achieving the global goals, where the intention is for the members of these localized networks in the local communities to do their own local work to implement the goals in ways that will leave no one behind, especially as we approach the end of the Sustainable Development Goal period out to 2030 and enter the period of the Regenerative Development Goals from 2030 to 2045, as we anticipate may happen as demand for these solutions increases, especially among young people who are concerned about their own future, as issues like global warming, climate change, loss of biodiversity, inflation, housing, food security impact all of their livelihoods in some ways, and in some cases, even their ability to survive the extreme conditions that are starting to appear in communities around the world. Again, you will find links to join these networks in the chat. And so part of the work that we do at UnityNet International in partnership with our community organizations like Drawdown Markham is to dive into and leverage the local knowledge of the people on the ground in these local communities who know their watersheds, know their local businesses, organizations, community leaders, and the institutions, use this intimate local knowledge in a way to help build local networks of regenerative development professionals and practitioners who are confident will become members of the Global Partnership for Regenerative Development, because that is the future of infrastructure and business globally that we believe will be the future. So the GP4RD, as we call it, is a Regenerative Development Professionals Network that's tasked with the local implementation of these various practical solutions for achieving and helping communities and all the citizens achieve these global goals in each one of our own local communities, including here in the city of Markham, York Region, Greater Toronto, Ontario, Canada, in the Great Lakes watershed of northeastern Turtle Island in North America. And so again, you will find in the chat many of the links that will connect you into the network of networks that we are building. So we are again using social media. So one of the other groups that we are also supporting through Drawdown Markham is the Regenerative Living, Learning, and Lifestyle Network, which is a public group and discussion around helping humanity accelerate this transition from the current situation of waging wars and using winner-take-all competition for implementing solutions to our problems, also described culturally as homo configliere. By understanding this concept of Ubuntu for business, we're helping each person in community and business to achieve a state of being where all people, including our decision makers, realize that we are all human beings, we are all part of nature and must therefore take care of each other and our mothers, including Mother Nature. So it is a state of consciousness called Homo Amore Universalis, which is an idea that I believe that young people can embrace as they learn how to restore nature, our communities, and our economy back into balance as part of a holistic partnership with all our relations. So again, you will find links to the Regenerative Living, Learning, and Lifestyle Network in the chat. So another partner that I want to mention that we're also working with is the Indigenous community created by the Sustainable Development Association in Montreal, where Douglas Jack has previously opened our eyes to the concept of reglobalization and re-indigenization through his programs of building local community enterprise networks and partnerships and empowerment systems at the grassroots level through the neighborhood and the multi-home integration cataloging and mapping. So there are decades of valuable information on the website that's shown on the screen. We hope that we can use their model to develop our Interchange for Peace Human Resource Catalog, the HRC, that we are developing as well. So you can see additional information about those networks in the chat, and related networks like the Biodiversity Network and other information as well about the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration as an example of what we are aligning with. I do want to mention as well, we are doing this presentation in collaboration with Andrew Networks, which is in California, in Los Angeles. We call Andrew our Yes, Yes, Yes partner. His network is also our door opening network of the Global Unity Network, or UnityNet, so that members of our network are able to discover their inner selves and passions, so they can come together with the people of the network acting like a net to support the dreams of our members. So they can leverage those passions, transform their visions of a better future for themselves and their communities into a new reality. But it should be a reality that makes sense for both themselves and their communities, however they might define what that better future is collectively, as they seek to work together in partnership and leave no one behind in their local communities. So Andrew Networks also host our weekly Thursday Zoom calls, those IGU Summit events, which are committed to do weekly until the end of this year, December 2023. Andrew Networks is also a brand of domain name owned by ParXTC Export Trading Company, comprising the various social media channels like TRN-TV, Universal Citizens Media Networks, Conversations with Andrew Williams Jr., and many others. Andrew Networks also donates our UnityNet hosting and promotional support services, and is also able to rebroadcast any kind of production-ready episodes that focus on things like sustainable development, regenerative solutions, localization, and local self-sufficiency and related themes. He does this by broadcasting and recording for posterity all of the events and programs on the AHIABGA.org domain, which gets redirected to his various channels, including the UCIT-TV site and others. So again, you will find in the chat some additional links to the ID Summit event and the Global Compact vision and strategy that we are aligning with. One other local organization that we do support here in Markham is the South Markham Food Security Network, which was started by a gentleman by the name of Michael Chen, who is also with an organization called Food Forest South Markham, which was a conversation that started in 2020 in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic as a conversation between Michael and the Youth and Parents Association of Markham, or YPAM. Michael was attending Teachers College at the time and was interested in gardens and the concept of establishing local learning hubs for youth and local families to use in their own local communities. So Michael was inspired by the TRCA's SNAP projects, where the residents saved water, grew their own edible fruit trees, and took ownership of their parks. He said to me at the time, I'd like to see something similar in South Markham. So I introduced Michael to our community sustainability working group at Science for Peace, which also hosts Drawdown Markham. I told him that we were working in partnership with the Energime Global Cooperation Turtle Island and their Go Local campaign for community resilience and adaptation that's working in support of the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration that takes place again from 21 to 2030. So again, that previous link is in the chat. You will also see some additional links, for instance, to YPAM and to the Community Sustainability Working Group of Science for Peace and the Smart Governance Network for Markham. And so I wanted to mention as well, Drawdown Markham is an essential part of founding and a founding member of the Markham INAB Collaborative, our local interfaith neighborhood academic and business collaborative that's part of UnityNet GTA and is intended to empower the local humanitarian entrepreneurs who will be implementing their holistic cooperative community Unity Garden Learning Center spaces in all the local communities of the city of Markham, York Region, and the Greater Toronto Area as well. So again, find the link to the Markham INAP Collaborative in the chat. So, of course, I do want to mention UnityNet GTA, which brings together all these 25 municipalities of the Greater Toronto Area to work together and empower young female and feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs who will be the first to implement the globalized enterprise solutions for achieving the global goals through their community-based enterprises and businesses, with the intention is to leave no one behind in each one of our 25 local communities of the Greater Toronto Area of Canada, here on Turtle Island in the Great Lakes watershed, north of Lake Ontario. And so then you'll find additional information about the Unity Network GTA in that. Of course, UnityNet GTA is part of UnityNet Ontario, which is still fairly new. It's a provincial organization, the first in Canada. Also includes UnityNet Gov, a similar network in the Greater Ottawa Valley. We're also plan to implement our UnityNet programs of localization and the community interventions that help to create the localized empowerment networks for the local humanitarian entrepreneurs who are implementing these open source climate smart infrastructure solutions as community Unity Garden learning centers, and that will teach all of our young people and their families in their own local communities how to implement these local alternative solutions for achieving the global goals through their businesses as part of local, regional, provincial, national, and international empowerment network of networks that we call UnityNet. So again, in the chat, you'll find additional information about UnityNet Ontario. We also have UnityNet Canada. This network was created because we intend to establish similar provincial and territorial networks across Canada in the future. Of course, right now we are focused on Ontario. This is where we live. The best way to work and move forward quickly is to focus on the local, but think globally when considering solutions that will help to create a better world for the next 7 generations. Again, you will find in the chat additional information and connection to UnityNet Canada. So the final partner network that I would like to mention today is UnityNet Turtle Island, which encompasses UnityNet Canada, the US, the Caribbean, Mexico, Central America, and even South America by treaty. It's intended to help bring together people of all cultures across both continents of the Americas, but especially so we can engage in dialogue and possible partnership with the indigenous peoples of the Americas and worldwide as we consider partnerships between people and local communities on continents like Africa and Eurasia and even the islands in Oceania as well, as a way to empower local communities to take action to implement the local solutions for achieving these global goals locally through their community-based humanitarian enterprises and businesses and the institutions through the global partnerships that UnityNet International and our partners help them establish in their own local communities worldwide. So again, find in the chat information about UnityNet Turtle Island, as well as seeing that it is a partner of the Africa and Diaspora Network. And so on this final opening slide, I come full circle back to Drawdown Markham, where I would like to emphasize again our partnership with UnityNet. We consider to implement partnerships with any other local community or organization in the world as a way to help implement these local open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure and the related enterprises and learning programs for young people and families as we move forward toward a globalized, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind, especially as we approach 2030 and the end of the SDGs, where we also seek ways to learn about these solutions to our various predicaments like climate change and biodiversity, and energy and housing and food security and reliable income, but where we can also find solutions to all of these problems in our own local communities, if only we begin to develop the partnerships not only locally, but globally as well, by celebrating our diversity and the diversity of humanity that is actually one of the most important assets. And through these networks and partnerships we create, we begin learning how to be compassionate entrepreneurs who have the knowledge, the skills, and the empathy to change the future of our global economy, so it will serve all people and living things in the natural world equitably. Because it is one of the most important things that we can do as parents of children who are seeking ways to create a better future for themselves and their own children and grandchildren, and are thinking ahead to at least the next 7 generations of human beings on this singular, unique, and beautiful planet we call Earth, which is, in fact, the only place in the universe where human beings can naturally thrive, but only if we take care of our Mother Nature and take care of each other as well. Oops, go back to that one. Sorry, I have to go back. The presentation today is being done about 1 month after the UN Biodiversity Conference, that COP15, which was held in Montreal, Quebec, the seat of the UN CBD Secretariat. That took place from December 7th to 19th, 2022, where COP15 focused on protecting nature and halting biodiversity loss around the world. So the Government of Canada participated, with the Prime Minister of Canada having strong presence at the meeting. Unlike many of his global counterparts, Canada's priority was to ensure the COP15 was a success. We'll see. This follows COP27 in Egypt the previous month, where I noted that it would be worth keeping an eye on the thematic days of the discussions around them, like just transition and food security and innovative finance for climate and development, in investing in the future of energy, water security, and the sustainability of vulnerable communities. They talked about science and youth and future generations, decarbonization, adaptation, agriculture, gender, and water as well, along with what they call ACE, or Civil Society, Biodiversity, and Solutions. So over the past few months, we had also asked some important questions of the 2022 Markham Municipal Council candidates in the previous election, many of whom joined us on our second monthly Drawdown Markham Zoom call, just like this one. The first thing that I did ask of those candidates was, if elected, would you pledge to work with the members of Drawdown Markham and UnityNet GTA to plant a youth peace garden at the City of Markham municipal offices? So that was sort of our entry point into discussions with our own local municipality. You can find in the chat some additional information and links to many of those networks that are related to this discussion. So I noted as well during that presentation, we would like to establish the UnityNet Youth Peace Gardens in Markham and York Region as a network of gardens across the city, and do a Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting ceremony at each one of them, with the owners of the land and those who use it on a regular basis. For each youth peace garden, we do also want to raise an Indigenous unity flag in ceremony, together with local Indigenous peoples who may also wish to do some drumming and or smudging of sage and or sweetgrass in order to ensure we are not forgetting our local Indigenous partners. Many of these ceremonies will be done on World Environment Day during our yearly Abraham Project celebrations in June on the 5th, starting this year, 2023. So again, in the chat, you will find some relevant links to our Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting network and the different INAB collaborative networks that we are building in the Greater Toronto area. There is also a link to the networks I mentioned, UnityNet Ontario and UnityNet Canada, and our partner organizations, again, in Africa and globally as well, through the Indigenous Global Unity Network. Oops, it seems. So the second question that I had asked at our municipal candidates at that time was, would you also encourage our local businesses through the Markham Chamber of Commerce and the Board of Trade to also plant youth peace gardens at all of their headquarters? So this is especially important to do with any and all businesses and organizations in Markham and in York Region in the Greater Toronto Area who are members of the UN Global Compact and have local offices here wherever they are. If they have headquarters of these companies and organizations here in the GTA or not, as long as they do have an office. So again, some additional information and links to those organizations of the UN Global Compact and the Chamber of Commerce. So the third question I asked the municipal candidates during that meeting was, would you do the same thing for the various local schools, both public and private, at all levels of learning, from kindergartens and primary and secondary schools up to York University and Seneca College, as well as community service organizations like Lions Club, Rotary, and YMCA, and encourage them to also plant youth peace gardens on their own properties as well. So this is our entry point into many of the discussions we will have here in Markham as we move forward in developing our network. So one other thing that I mentioned as I summarized what I had asked the candidates in the election was to note that the members of Drawdown Markham and UnityNet would love to see the youth peace gardens popping up all over the city, planted by residents and businesses and families and children, like Scouts groups and others, as a reminder that the city of Markham and our citizens are committed to achieving our own sustainability plan and will pledge to domesticate the SDGs, or those global goals, into all of our own local communities as part of an effort to implement the groundbreaking Green Print, which is Markham's community sustainability plan to improve our natural environment and enhance the quality of life in our city. We want to ensure the participants on this call understand that the Green Print is a 50+ year plan with a bold vision and a strong leadership commitment to make Markham one of the most livable and sustainable communities in North America, where the focus is to develop corporate and community initiatives that promote energy conservation and efficiency, green technology, food security, and environmental enhancement, where the city of Markham itself has noted that together with these innovative programs, they have dramatically reduced Markham's carbon footprint and improved our natural environment, and where the goal of the city of Markham is to protect the public and respect the natural and built environments through excellence in sustainable community planning and infrastructure management programs. I noted as well that the youth peace gardens are simple. They are gardens that have a tree of peace and reconciliation planted along with an Indigenous unity flag and a peace pole, and usually a commemorative plaque fixed to a boulder marking the spot as an important site in the community to have conversations about the various local solutions for achieving the global goals, starting with, again, those sustainable development goals. Again, in the chat, you'll find UnityNet Youth Peace Garden Network and information about the Unity Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree plantings and a public network that is related to that as well. And there are professional networks associated with that. There is also an interns network that we have developed so we can bring young people into these conversations and into the whole discussion around actually implementing these real world solutions in our own local community. So I mentioned as well that these gardens could also be as symbolic of the city of Markham's municipal energy plan called Getting to Zero, a comprehensive long-term citywide energy plan that has the objective of achieving net zero. So net zero emissions by 2050 is the goal. This is in addition to the youth peace gardens also being symbolic of the city of Markham's inclusivity, equity, diversity, and accessibility plan, for which the city of Markham is committed to supporting people and communities in all of their diversity and stands firmly against all forms of hate, racism, and discrimination, and is one of the city's key strategic priorities embedded in the city's strategic plan called Building Markham's Future Together. So our Drawdown Markham and UnityNet GTA members would also like to help the members of our local communities, including the residents and businesses, the institutions, and other community organizations in the city of Markham in ways that allow us to become the first net negative city in the world, where that is actively implementing local drawdown solutions that create local jobs, help to accelerate the path to net zero, and hopefully move us beyond net zero and into negative emissions territory, where the city becomes an example of a drawdown city. I did also mention the city council candidates at that time when we had our meeting, that with the establishment of the youth peace gardens all across the city of Markham, which can also be established at the head offices of our local businesses, institutions, and community organizations at our schools, possibly also in some of our public parks and public pathways for walking or biking, that with the construction of these youth peace gardens in the city, we could also become eligible to become an international peace city as well, joining the nearly 400 others around the world who have done so already. So again, in that, you'll find information about the diversity and equity plan of the city. There is also some additional news release by the city and that goal of achieving net zero. We also have our own network of the localized net zero team for this region. And so I also want to mention a few other things, although we didn't expect any promises to be made at that time. We would like to do also work closely with the City of Markham, the York Region School Boards, York University, Seneca College, various local community groups, service organizations like Rotary Markham, and establish a formal INAP collaborative with and for the residents in the City of Markham. So we can begin to consider the establishment of our own local community garden learning center and community hub to be shared among the community members here and used by all the schools and community partners to deliver the education and training that the various young people and professionals in Markham would require to learn as a means of not only surviving global warming, but to potentially thriving even in a warming and chaotic climate now and into the future. So the INAP collaboratives are intended to empower our young people to be mentored by our elders to take local action to deliver the various humanitarian enterprise solutions locally in a way that ensures that we leave no one behind as we transition our economy to a globalized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy right here in the City of Markham, in the Rouge and Don watersheds, in the Great Lakes Basin of the Greater Toronto area of North America, Great Lakes here in Canada. Because once we establish the local INAP collaborative, we can begin planning our next big steps, which will be the organization of the Bubble Fun festivals and the Bubble Fun dancing, sports for young people and families to participate in learning about these local drawdown solutions in a way that's engaging and fun to do. We call it edutainment, and there are meaning STEAM education, where a STEM goes to STEAM. STEAM means science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So the Bubble Fun festivals normally take place in August on any date between August 9th and 19th, where August 9th is the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples, and the 19th is World Humanitarian Day. And between those dates is also August 12th, International Youth Day. So again, in the chat, you will find information about these different events that I just mentioned, including International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples, World Humanitarian Day, and the International Youth Day, along with our own network for the GTA Bubble Fun Festival Network and the Bubble Fun Sports International Network and the International Bubble Fun Festival Network, which coordinates all of these events. Noting as well that we support the Spark for Humanity Super Jubilee 400 Spark Classrooms Network, as well as the original Global Beauty Pandemic, and here in the Toronto area, the Brief Pandemic Team, and the projects of the Super Jubilee 400 network as we implement our local solutions here through our network of networks. So I mentioned on Monday, October 24th, all of our local municipalities in Ontario held municipal elections to decide who should become our local decision makers at the municipal level. So this included our mayor, Frank Scarpitti, who was elected for his 5th straight term as mayor, generating more than 44,000 votes. He beat Councillor Don Hamilton, who received less than 25,000. So 4 regional councillors were elected, including Michael Chan, Alan Ho, Jim Jones, and Joe Lee, all familiar names in York Region. Jim Jones in particular had an interesting election platform because he would like to invite various companies and solution providers from across Ontario, across Canada, and from around the world to set up the North American head offices in the city of Markham, possibly in the Markham Mixed Innovation District, especially if they have innovative solutions for growing food in cities like the city of Markham and those in the Greater Toronto area. Essentially, Jim Jones has had as an ongoing platform election promise to establish the city of Markham as a vertical farming innovation hub in Canada and North America, especially for those solutions that are applicable to harsher and more extreme climates like up here in Canada, where the weather is colder. It's normally impossible to grow anything in the winter season for nearly 8 months a year because the ground is frozen, or like trying to grow food on concrete, where many plants are all dormant, hiding away from the October weather until about the springtime comes again in April or May. So Jim Jones' plan is to ensure food security for the residents of the Greater Toronto area by demonstrating solutions for growing food 365 days a year, even in some of the harshest conditions imaginable, while still being able to pledge that the city of Markham is able to achieve its net zero ambitions across all sectors of the economy, including Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, which will soon be required by the UN for those countries who have signed on to the Paris Agreement, which includes Canada. So the 2022 Markham municipal election results are being posted to the chat. Again, just for people to understand who are the people in this community. Of course, through Drawdown Markham, we can directly interact with these elected leaders, as I did just last week in meeting Jim Jones personally, face to face, for a 2-hour discussion. But my own counselors are here that I can meet with any one of them who have different ideas for how we might be able to move forward, including my counselor for Ward 8, Issa Lee, who I've met a few times in the past to have some of these preliminary discussions, especially around planting the trees of peace and reconciliation. In the chat, you'll also find the additional links to our Smart Greenhouse network and the Unity Tourism STDs network, which are relevant to the proposals that we would like to put forward, especially for people like Jim Jones. And so again, we'll find some additional links that are relevant with regard to the Paris Agreement, as well as our own local network, the Unity Net Zero Canada discussion group on how to bring the professionals to discuss these solutions. So I wanted to note as well one more time that the UN had issued a report on the 8th of November 2022 called the Report of the High-Level Expert Group on Net Zero Commitments, which noted that the growing number of governments and state or non-state actors are pledging to be carbon-free, which is obviously good news, as noted by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The problem that the report noted is that the criteria and benchmarks for these net zero commitments have varying levels of rigor and loopholes. Guterres noted that these loopholes are, quote, wide enough to drive a diesel truck through. As Guterres noted as well, we must have net zero or zero tolerance for net zero greenwashing, as he said. Today's expert group is a how-to guide to ensure credible, accountable net zero pledges, providing clarity in 4 key areas, including environmental integrity, credibility, accountability, and the role of governments. So it also focused on non-state actors, including businesses, financial institutions, cities, and regions. And they also noted that on issues of environmental integrity, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is their scientific North Star. It was also noted that the net zero pledges must be in line with the IPCC scenarios limiting warming to 1.5 degrees, which means global emissions must decline by at least 45% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. The report also noted that any pledges that were made by state and non-state entity to achieve the net zero goals should have interim targets every 5 years, starting in 2025. So the targets must cover all greenhouse gas emissions and all scopes of emissions, which translates into the following. For financial institutions, it means all financed activities. For businesses, it means all emissions, direct, indirect, and those originating from supply chains. And for cities and regions, like the city of Markham and York Region, it means all territorial emissions. As Gutierrez noted, the message is clear to all those managing existing voluntary initiatives, as well as CEOs, mayors, and governors committing to net zero. Abide by this standard and update your guidelines right away, and certainly no later than COP28. In other words, the UN was putting their foot down, holding the entities' feet to the fire, the corporations, the financial institutions, the cities, and the regions to make good on their pledges to achieve net zero in reality and not just on paper, which may mean a lot of squashed feet and burnt feet in the near future. So again, I bring into the chat the actual original press release by the UN, and the members of that panel made that recommendation and issued that press release. It includes Ms. Catherine McKenna, founder and principal of Climate and Nature Solutions, and the organization Women Leading on Climate, which was launched at COP26 in Glasgow. There are also a number of other members. Again, you can find that information in the chat. It takes me a little bit of time here to do that, but this is important, I believe, for those to understand all of the relationships, especially to these activities that are happening, where the UN is saying, look, if you want to say you're going to achieve net zero, absolutely have to take action. And so I am also putting some information about our own networks, our infrastructure network as an example. Here in Canada, the Global Partnership for Regional Development, which is of course linked to UnityNet, as well as other initiatives like the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative and the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. And that was launched actually in April 2021. So they are linking executive compensation now to this ESG performance, which is very important to understand that CFOs at corporations will not be compensated if they do not achieve the goals, the ESG, that they are saying that they would like to. So this was my final slide from last month, no longer this month. We did close out my presentation for the day and opened discussion for all on the call. I do have a few more slides this time around because I want to talk about our new UnityNet Living Recalendar and our primary events for 2023. I want to also mention...
Just to remind you, Lloyd, both Sir Bailey and Jenny Carrington are here. So I'm not sure if that has an impact on you or not, but just wanted to bring you to your attention. I'm not sure how much time they have, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Okay,
so thank you. I did see that very briefly earlier, that there were a couple more people that came on. But I did want to mention our Sunlight Spectacle Global Hybrid Virtual In-Person Edutainment events that the Global Unity Network organized. We'd like to do this every time there's a significant solar eclipse visible by people anywhere in the world. The first Sunlight Spectacle event we did was Sunday, June 21st, 2020, during the pandemic lockdowns, where we brought together a very few people, social distance, masked, in order to promote our globalization programs globally for the first time. So the journey of the eclipse events we celebrate in the local communities by the citizens of every one of these countries that can see that eclipse as they locally implement the global goals. So the events include live broadcast, interviews, music, done for the duration of the solar eclipse, coordinated with our associates in places like Bermuda, who are spearheading that Super Jubilee 400 and Spark for Humanity campaign. I also want to briefly mention the initial discussions we had regarding Indigenous Grandmothers Earth Walk 2025 showcase event, intended to be a walk or perhaps an e-bike journey across Canada from east to the west, from Newfoundland to Vancouver, so that Indigenous grandmothers and families of Turtle Island and Africa and the world can plant trees of peace and reconciliation, raise Indigenous unity flags during and ahead of the Invictus Games, which was announced by Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex at the Invictus Games in The Hague in 2022. We also want to host a Grandmothers Indigenous Bubble Fun Multicultural Family Day next year, or this year actually, here in the city of Markham with the city and the Chamber of Commerce and the Rotary Club and others, to bring awareness to all of these eco-villages that are being planned and built around the world, even in our biggest and busiest cities like here in the city, Greater Toronto area, where we can also plan to build at least one as a Unity Peace Center, showcasing all the 5 open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure solutions for achieving a compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. So again, in the chat, it's the historical event. Toronto, it's unexpected, as well as additional information about the GTA Bubble Fund Festival discussion group and the main International Bubble Fund groups that are related to that. So first, let me show you the at-a-glance calendar for all of 2023, 12 months. And so you will see on the calendar all of the important dates that UnityNet would like to do events over the coming season. You'll also see there's not much happening in January, except for next Tuesday, January 24th, the International Day of Education. We don't have any events planned for that day by any of our members. My hope is that we will have a conversation about it among the members of the networks, as someone might make a proposal to do something last minute. Perhaps someone on this call today might have some ideas. If yes, please contact me afterward. Let me know your thoughts or ideas for a special event that we could do on the International Day of Education, which is Tuesday, January 24th. More importantly are those key events that you see in red on the calendar. There are only 5 of them in April, in June, in August, and finally in October. So we have about 3 months to plan for the April event, which takes place on Earth Day. So I'm using as our template a poster that acts as a guide to our discussions today. It provides a template for these important initiatives we'd like to do in 2023, along with the most important dates in the 2023 calendar that we need to consider, like UNDRIP Day, April 22nd, Earth Day, including a drumming ceremony in city halls with the local and global Indigenous peoples, some of whom may participate virtually. Some Unity at Abraham Project tree planting and Indigenous Unity flag raising ceremonies on June 5th, World Environment Day, so we can begin to establish those youth peace gardens in our local communities. So the UnityNet Bubble Fun Festival, with the arts, sports, dancing, and other family activities for community edutainment taking place in August, related to all the various regenerative climate smart solutions that will help our communities achieve food security and food sovereignty, and doing it the regenerative climate smart way will also help us to achieve net zero and drawdown, along with eventually achieving a localized productive CCRE that LB. A Global Cooperation Day event on October 4th is our Universal Children's Day, which will kick off Youth Peace Week and our UnityNet Climate Smart Youth Forum Week, eventually, actually about a fortnight, taking place from Global Cooperation Day, October 4th, until World Food Day, October 16th. The kickoff event for Youth Peace Week includes a virtual and in-person screening of the film Sultan and the Saint, followed by a virtual community dialogue about the UnityNet AHIABGA process of globalization of global goals and the various local solutions for achieving a globalized productive CCRE.LMB. My hope is that all of the UnityNet members will also be able to use the same 2023 roadmap as a way for local communities all around the world to begin organizing their own local INABCs, these local community partnerships, in alignment with what we are planning to do here in Canada through UnityNet GTA in Ottawa and Calgary and those in BC. By partnering with our colleagues in California too, possibly in Los Angeles and San Francisco, maybe even in New York and Texas, as well as in the Caribbean, islands like Bermuda and Martinique, and in South Asia, in countries like India and Nepal and Sri Lanka, and possibly also in Southeast Asia and Oceania, starting in the Philippines and Indonesia and Australia. Remember, it is these local partnerships, especially with the African diaspora, that will truly allow local communities and people in countries across our network to accelerate their own local regenerative development pathways to achieving sustainable livelihoods and climate security by participating in these UnityNet CTP program for building holistic, regenerative, climate smart communities, both here in Canada and around the world. It also starts with the twinning of the trees of peace and reconciliation and the twinning of the resulting local INAP collaborative teams. It culminates in the twinning of the community youth peace gardens and the Unity Forests, the Climate Smart Kitchens, the Unity Garden Learning Centers or community hubs, the Unity Peace Centers, and the Unity Eco Villages, including the Rutical Village developments that are designed by the grassroots communities who understand concepts like hip hop and Ubuntu and the power of partnerships and leaving no one behind in support of Mother Earth and the revival of our intimate relationship to her. Because as Douglas Carmichael recently wrote, cooperation and love are needed to make it through the climate emergency. Now I'd like to go through a little more details of the various important dates. The first event being Undrip Day, which takes place on Earth Day, Saturday, April 22nd. So this is a new event that we have never done before. We hope to work with the founder of the Indigenous Unity Flag organization, Michael, who also co-founded the Indigenous Unity Network as well. On this date, we'd like to do a drumming ceremony at Markham City Hall, hopefully with some Indigenous peoples. At this time, we will also begin to engage with the schools, the teachers, and the community members and organizations in our Heptamatrix partnership template, begin to encourage young people to work together with their families, their teachers, and their community members that they trust, start to plan out the planting of their own youth peace gardens in their own local communities, whether they're done at their own local school or in a public park or on a private property across the city. The second event we have in the calendar is the Abraham Project tree planting that we'll do for the second time on World Environment Day, Monday, June 5th. During this event, we'll begin to establish these INAP collaboratives in the local community as we do the tree planting, the flag raising, and smudging ceremonies at the youth peace gardens that the students and young people and families have been planning since April. So the third important day is the Coordinated Bubble Fun Festivals on International Youth Day, Saturday, August 12th, where we celebrate our diversity at the youth peace gardens with the whole communities present, hopefully in cooperation with PodNet GTA and the Global and Rotary International via the local Rotary clubs. Finally, we have the dates between Global Cooperation Day and Wednesday, October 4th, where the Ubuntu Summit launches Youth Peace Week, leading to the Global Climate Smart Youth Forum, which is Monday, October 16th, World Food Day, for the Global Climate Smart Youth Forum hybrid in-person virtual learning event for whole communities located locally and worldwide, so they can learn about these productive open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure solutions to the globalized humanitarian enterprises that will allow communities to achieve greater resilience and adapt to climate change while also implementing local solutions to achieving these global goals. So the two Ubuntu events that were done in 2021 and 22 are now used to launch our UnityNet Peace Week events. So again, in chat, I am putting some links to them so that people can have that information at their fingertips as well. So we will also need to discuss two key projects that I want to focus on in 2023. The first is the establishment of an ecosystem-centered excellence in Ontario, possibly to be done in the Ottawa Valley in Eastern Ontario, not quite known yet. This may become a network of eco-village demonstration projects where we can work with organizations here in Ontario and across Canada who can each demonstrate some of the various different components, eventually showcasing the 5 different open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure solutions that can be deployed in our local communities at the eco-village centers of excellence. So we will likely have these operated by the Maui Aloha project, which will be working in partnership with and synergy with all of the organizations of UnityNet and all of the members of the local communities. So the second project is the creation of the Markham, York Region, and GTA INAP collaboratives, which can support the 407 Transit Link Corridor projects, the 16 possible future projects that York Region may establish across York Region and the Greater Toronto area, from east to west along Highway 7 407 Transit Corridor, where York Regional member Jim Jones, which I mentioned earlier, has also, on his 5th term, wants to establish commercial vertical farming demonstration projects in each one of those transit hubs across the GTA. So the local INAP collaboratives supporting all of the local schools in the region and beyond who join the Global Sister School program, where I also want to stress that each of these local gardens and projects and events can be twinned with the garden project and event that can be done anywhere else in the world through that CTP program of Drawdown Markham's Community Climate Action Hub. So again, in the chat, you will find links again to all things that I have mentioned as well. And so at this point, today was always intended to be the date we start discussing the establishment of these primary enterprise network here in the GTA, starting with PodNet GTA, intended to become our own local cooperative enterprise member of the PodNet Global Cooperative Network, the enterprise network of regenerative housing, building, and community solutions. As with the rest of the Global Unity Network, the Greater Toronto area already has 3 primary social media pages for PodNet GTA, our public Facebook group, our LinkedIn Professionals Network, and a local WhatsApp discussion group for our local and regenerative infrastructure professionals in the region to learn all about these regenerative buildings and integrated food and energy and clean water production solutions that are available to our members as a result of the experts who occupy these primary networks. So the UnityNet Global Sister Schools program is a project of the GP4RD as a regenerative development professionals network established by UnityNet International and our partners within all of the continental networks of UnityNet. So the Global Partnership for Regenerative Development will be the epicenter for the professionals within UnityNet. So again, you can find links to the PodNet Enterprise Network, all 3 social media. You'll also find links to the LightPod design videos, Solar Village, and PodNet Solar as well to learn about these solutions. Today, we also have a couple more components of our network of networks to talk about as well. First is what we call the Global Sister Schools program, which include a couple of preliminary programs right now, including those UnityNet Youth Peace Garden Network, key to community-based infrastructure programs and network of Indigenous Global Unity Network. As you may recall, the UnityNet Youth Peace Gardens allow community members through the UnityNet Empowerment Network to engage in dialogue with youth about their own future well-being, how they can empower them by providing opportunities for those youth to meet their own needs and achieve their own collective dreams of a better world for all people and all our relations. So all the UnityNet Youth Peace Garden spaces will have a tree of peace and reconciliation planted within the gardens, along with the Indigenous Unity flags on a flagpole either in the gardens or nearby, as well as this peace pole that can be designed and built by the young people and families of the local community, or perhaps in some cases can be purchased from a local, hopefully Indigenous or Indigenous adjacent artist and erected in a conspicuous location with high foot traffic within or next to the garden, symbolizing the hopes and dreams of the entire human family, and where the peace pole allows people to come to these gardens, stand vigil in silent prayer for peace on earth. We hope that each youth peace garden will also have a commemorative plaque that tells the story of the garden and the people who created it, affixed to a boulder, a large rock that is representative of the geology of the region where the garden has been established. On that plaque will be a QR code that people can visit. When they visit the garden, they scan with their smartphones as they stand silently in vigil, say their own internal prayers or meditation, whatever is their own personal invocation, asking for peace on earth, which is done next to the tree and peace pole and the Indigenous Unity flag at the Youth Peace Garden. When they scan the QR code on the plaque on the rock in the garden, they'll be able to obtain additional information about the garden, about the people, about the environment, and about the watershed they're in, and all of the inhabitants, the people, and the local biodiversity, all our relations, along with the various humanitarian enterprises and localized regenerative and climate-smart businesses and civil society and other organizations in the community they are visiting. So all of these entities who are members of the local INAP collaborative and who are ensuring that everyone is properly educated and trained in these productive regenerative solutions, done in ways that ensure that nobody is being left behind in the local community, especially as we approach 2030 and begin to process of reimagining the types of regenerative infrastructure, organizations, and businesses that we want to have in our local communities as we collectively seek to create a localized, productive, compassionate, and collaborative economy that involves everyone, respects, protects, and restores nature and biodiversity in our local and regional watersheds, ensures that all of our relations, including those who are the most marginalized in our society, are not only not forgotten, but are empowered to take action with the rest of their local communities and all human beings on Earth to help restore Mother Nature and our relationship with her on this one and only planet, our home, and the only place in the universe where humans truly belong. So again, in the chat, you will find information about the Sister Schools Working Group, the professional network that was started by Julia Leabo and Lisa Sutton. And one last UnityNet program that I wanted to mention before the end of the day today in our discussions are the RDG clubs, the Regenerative Development Goal clubs, whose members will be proposing and promoting that the next phase of the UN Global Goals be focused on regenerative development. So this concept of a set of regenerative development goals, or RDGs, which would start from 2030 and go until 2045, is a concept where all people of the planet work together globally to regenerate their watersheds, regenerate Mother Earth, including environmental, ecological, biological health, and biodiversity, along with working together for the development of a localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. So the UnityNet model is intended to help deliver the local education and training infrastructure and related learning programs that allow youth, families, and local communities to work together in peace, collaborate at home, in their own local watersheds, but also with other local communities around the world in order to learn how to lift themselves out of poverty. The AHIABGA and the UnityNet localization process ultimately means establishing pathways of implementation for delivering the local solutions for achieving the localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. And in future, the Regenerative Development Goals, or RDGs, which we hope will be adopted by the UN from the year 2030 to 2045. And as noted there, we use the hashtags beyond SDGs, RDGs, and RDG goals. So this final network, I am putting that information and links in the chat. Of course, I also want to mention in the promotions that we would have some discussions about formally establishing PodNet GTA following this presentation. I'm hopeful that some local people on this call today will be able to come together in partnership with Drawdown Markham help to establish this enterprise network right here in the Toronto area, hopefully with the assistance of our global partners around the world through AHIABGA Global Cooperation Turtle Island, UnityNet, and the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors. Sorry. There is one more slide I do want to mention. I added this at the last minute this morning. Before we finish up the day, I do want to mention our UnityNet International is building a network of networks on social media. We do call this UnityNet. We are sharing the social media network with an entity called UNAT, or UnityNet Africa and Diaspora. This is the first continental network in Africa. It is UnityNet International, however, that will be building and hosting the Interchange for Peace VCN, setting the transparency and accountability structures and protocols and the membership criteria for joining the network formally. Only members who are compliant with the UNI protocols have created their own community-based INAP collaborative partnership co-ops in their own local communities will be able to join the Interchange for Peace VCN and thus gain access to all of the business tools, education, training, and especially the finance and the REFI for their local productive humanitarian enterprises and community organizations, including the ones that are or will be growing the regenerative climate smart food in their own local communities, wherever they are located in the world. Importantly, this is to prevent corruption, to help maintain transparency, and ensure that no members of the network are acting only for their own individual benefit, but instead all of the members who are making decisions about where the finance is flowing will be members of the local community cooperative enterprises and entities, the interfaith neighborhood academic and business collaboratives. So again, in the chat, you'll find a link to UnityNet Africa and Diaspora. So this completes the formal presentation. Again, before we close out, I do want to mention I will be following up with everyone who came on the call. Today, I will provide a link to the recording along with the PDF file available online so that everyone has a record of this presentation, the discussion, and the Zoom chat notes from today. I'll also be sending the same information to all of the Drawdown Markham members here in the city of Markham so that everyone has a chance equally to understand what it is that we're doing to empower our community members to implement these local solutions for achieving the global goals through the establishment of the local humanitarian enterprises run by local female and feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs who are establishing the local community Unity Garden learning centers here in the city of Markham and the York region in the Greater Toronto area of Southern Ontario, Canada, on Turtle Island. So that completes the presentation today. I can open up to discussions. I will stop the share at this point. And open the mic. If you would like to, Andrew, restart the recording. And Lowell comes on and turns on his video, and there goes my own video. I don't know why that is.